I don't have any
I'm
water,
already
so
on data.
if I need to get any water, I'll just let you know. But I didn't get any right now. Actually, there's a couple like survivor level sips over here, so we'll be okay. You love that
one, eh? Oh man,
what's going on,
hang on. My eyes are legitimately watering. Survivor level sips. That was good.
Maybe I'll take. I might
save that one. Put that one in the archives.
That was more of a placebo. I don't even know if I got anything.
Stop, man.
All right, I'm going. I'm going to keep this vibe. What's going on? We're back, guys, with another Prospect Watch, our second one of the year. Basically, our second one ever. We're ready to kick it off with March 2021. Probably one of the best months of fights we're going to see in probably a long time, if not one of the best ever. It's going to kick it off this weekend with our boy Israel Adesanya and a growing legend in Jan, who's winning titles at this age, Pies. So, big shout out to Jeremy for providing us the list again. Head over to MMASucka to check out the write-up and everything. These guys are doing big work over there as usual with MMA, where I got my start. If you're interested, they're covering just about every league over there. So, Pies, how you feeling about this month?
I mean, I think you know how I'm feeling personally right now. This guy made me laugh pretty heavily right before we got on here. As you can see, my eyes are watering. But, pretty pumped to do another Prospect Watch. We're going to be seeing a lot of these guys, if not all of them, in action this month, as long as nothing gets rescheduled and stuff. So pretty pumped about some of these guys. And most of them we'll see actually this weekend, like you said, on the Israel Adesanya card. So let's dive right into it, man.
I'm ready for it. So who you got there?
Perfect. So kicking us off at number 10 is Hannah 24K Goldy. Very fitting nickname for her last name there.
For some reason, I just thought of that rapper.
Bruno?
No, 24. No, that's the track. There's actually a man by the name of 24K.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Got all kinds of versatility. Hannah, she sits at 5-1. She did lose her UFC debut to Miranda Granger. And, in rewatching that one, it just seemed like she wasn't aggressive enough. She really let Miranda dictate that fight. She was up against the fence a lot and didn't really seem to get too aggressive. So curious to see if she can bounce back from that one. She did have a canceled bout against our girl Lukbumi, which would have been a really good one, as we're excited to see her get back in the
that would have been a great striking battle, right? With Lukbumi was just coming out, big, bing, bang, boom, boom, like just landing bombs. And Jessica Penne, who she's probably going to end up seeing in a little bit here, is such another legend, right? So she's going to get all these different looks. But you just brought up a great one, right? Miranda Granger's like all over the place with some of these fighters. And then you've got Jillian, right? Debut was against Jillian and actually won. Jillian Robertson ended up losing that fight via decision. So I kind of like what we see from like that overall skill, right? But at the same time, when you look at the rest of this prospect list, like, are you really seeing someone that we can kind of put in the top 9? I mean, I'm kind of more asking you as to what you think there too.
It's impossible to, man. This month is stacked with prospects, and a lot of them can be quote unquote prospects, as they've had a little bit of time in the UFC. But this list is stacked. Nothing against Hannah, but it's going to be hard to move up this list for sure.
Because the other thing with me is, like, we talk about layoffs, right? We always talk about, what kind of things happens to certain fighters when they have big layoffs. Are they learning more, or are they just dealing with a lot more personal stuff that prevents them from kind of, getting back in there? And that's where I think, like, for her, there's a lot stacked against her. Even in this one list where we're listing off 10 people, I mean, where we feel, a little hard pressed to put her any higher than number 10. So I think that a fight like Jessica Penne right away is going to give her that bump that she needs, you know what I mean? Like, she's going to need to be able to look like a person that belongs. And when you fight, I guess, veterans like Jessica Penne, it's going to be, a good test for her.
Yeah, absolutely. And winning that one can go a long way in rising these ranks for sure. So, at number 10, we got Hannah Goldy. She's
5-1, right? So, I mean, she's got the record to kind of, stick with it. The striking does looks good. No takedowns in her UFC career yet. So, obviously, we know what she likes to do, but let's see what she can kind of accomplish against a veteran, and wherever the fight might go. I think this is just a perfect test, because at the end of the day, if this is the next loss on your record, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, for sure. And so that fight is going to take place on March 27th. Stay tuned for that one. We'll be able to see Hannah Goldy take on Jessica Pena in that one.
Boom, boom.
Exactly. And so that takes us to number 9. Number 9 is Abu Azaitar, a nice German middleweight. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's just like there's so many storylines with this guy that, like, I don't know where to take it. MMA related, USADA related, criminal related. Like, I don't even want to go that route. But like the USADA thing set him back almost a year. So it's just like now he's 34 on prospect list.
Yeah, what's crazy in doing a little research on this man, and I feel like his baby bro could have been on the list too. Atman Azaitar is making a true name for himself as well. So it's pretty crazy that we got the older bro on the list. But he did have a couple canceled bouts that I was really looking forward to. The two dudes end up fighting each other in the end. But DiChirico and Joaquin Buckley would have really defined what level of prospect this guy is.
Well, and the big thing for me too is based on the fact that his next opponent is 0-3-1 in the UFC and hasn't won since 2018, like huge change in I guess proven skill level and UFC experience and all that, right? Both those guys you just named are severely dangerous and are true tests when it comes to the striking game, right? Like DiChirico's defensive striking and his ability to kind of land those counterpunches. Woo! I mean, he's the real deal. And I think he definitely humbled one of the biggest prospects we've probably seen, before we started doing this. And here we are, right? Trying to cover some next. Abu Azaitar, who's going to try to come in at 34 and do some damage as a 2.0 kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And so, he did win his UFC debut against Vitor Miranda. That was a tight one. When I was rewatching it, like it could have gone either way. I would not have been surprised with any outcome on that one. He did have some great takedowns in that one, some real vicious punches. So curious to see if he can continue to work on that.
Well, like he loves those looping punches, right? So even if you watch a lot of his tape, even before kind of the UFC time when maybe the USADA thing is starting to play a role, we'll see what happens. But, he was very powerful. He was able to leap forward, land good combos, big overhand hooks, like just really, God-given power and, we just talked about that there. A little bit of A, a little bit of B, but solid power in both hands. I think that was the great thing that I saw in a lot of his past highlights, man. It was just like he's a brawler and he mauls you. If he smells blood, this man's a hound.
Yeah. That's one thing I really noticed as well, man. If he sees his opportunity, he's going buck, man.
Couldn't agree more.
For sure. So we got Abu at number 9. He's set to take on Marc-Andre Barreau on March 27th at the end of the month.
Canadian man.
Like Suki, and like Suki said, he's an 0-3-1 fighter. This is a statement one for Abu for sure. So let's see how he comes out of that one and see if he can climb up those ranks.
And I was wondering if Jeremy maybe had like a soft corner for this man to maybe throw him on the list and be like, I believe in this guy to just come back and give us a bang, second coming,
Or maybe something we don't, man. I guess March 27th will tell.
He's been at it for a very long time, that man. Somewhat of a mini mentor, if you will.
And so, that takes us right into number 8. I'm really excited for this one and diving deep into this woman a little bit. We got Luana. You would. Of course, man. Of course. That's the casual in me coming out. So, we have her in at number 8. She is fighting out of Brazil. Sports an 8-1 record and has actually won 6 in a row. Before we dive a little bit into her technical aspects and fighting aspects, I was pretty curious to kind of learn about her story and, like her father being very protective of her, not wanting her to get hurt at all as she's learning the judo. And to be honest, like what can't this woman do, man? She's a model. She was, a professional tennis athlete set to go to the Olympics. Like now she's fighting. Like this shit is badass, man.
Yeah, no, she's a superstar, right? Like it's one of those like people that seem to be bred to do almost anything they want. It's just like one of those put your mind to something and absolutely go for it. After losing her first career fight via split decision in 2017, you just said, right, 6-fight winning streak. Like that's the thing that stood out to me the most because it includes first round finishes, a 3-0 brave run, and then the Dana White Contender Series, which we just kind of talked about a little bit before. But like, I love that she's able to just show off her striking too, right? We praise her for the judo and the BJJ, but I think the grappling is very much just like her major strength. But when we look at what she did to Stephanie Froso on the Contender Series, I thought that was one of the better female performances I think I've ever seen on the Dana White Contender Series. To be honest, like it rings familiar whenever we talk about her now, and I can't honestly say that in the grand scheme of things, like someone has stood out that much to me. You know what I'm saying? So in terms of looking forward to someone fighting, and like, I mean, I don't even think I'm saying too much here, because her first fight, you know, as you're probably going to bring up right now, is Randa Marcos, right? She's dominated competition,
which we know is no joke. Yeah, we've touched on her a few times. Like, yeah, that's a real credible opponent for sure. So was there anything in that Dana White Contender Series that really stood out to you? I mean, when I kind of rewatched it, I mean, it was a very close fight in my opinion. So,
well, actually, it's funny. There was, I think, more evidence of the dominance that she can bring in her fight afterwards against Yasmeli Iraq. Because if you look at the way that she actually, you know, switched from the striking to the BJJ, I was actually quite impressed there, because it was like, well, you know what? I'm not going to just sit here and strike with you. I'm going to just utilize my grappling, take you down, you know, perfect judo, like hip toss, like throw to the ground. She was on the ground and just couldn't move. It was game party done, you know, for the most part there. So for me, it was like, I really enjoyed the Dana White Contender Series, but I honestly consider the Dana White Contender Series, not to put fighters down, but this is the quality of fighters in the UFC now. It's the way we look at the, I think it's the G League, right? Or the Summer League even. We always say, like, if you dominate the Summer League, it doesn't mean you're NBA ready. It just means like you're ready to maybe take a chance on there, but you're not a starting caliber player by any means in the NBA.
Yeah. And you got raw skills.
Exactly. And so I think what Dana White Contender Series has brought to the sport is finding those raw skill athletes. Now, we're talking about a girl like Luana, who seems to show athleticism no matter what she does. I would love to see this girl just ballroom dance and just swing mans all over the place. But I mean, I really think that this is a dominant fighter, and with the right, you know, showing against Randa Marcos, who had a lot of trouble in her last fight, right? She kind of got beat up, and she needs to come back pretty strong from that fight too.
Yeah, so, you know, like he said, there's a lot of promise for Luana here. Would not be surprised to see her jump up this list real quick. She has all the tools, seems to have all the smarts. Let's see if it can be executed on March 27th, when she will take on Randa Marcos there.
Miocic Nagano card, boom, boom, boom.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby.
What a month, man. What a month.
Oh, yeah. They were not shorting us of entertainment in the month of March. That is for sure. And so that takes us right into number 7. Number 7, we got a nice young savage out of South Africa in JP Buys. You know, he headlines that flyweight division. You know, in learning a little bit about him, you know, he was very strong in the rugby game growing up, but had to, you know, jump into wrestling to kind of improve his rugby game. And through that wrestling, he learned, hey, maybe I'm more designed for individual sports, combat sports, you know, that maybe seems more suited up my alley. And so here we are, got number 7 prospect in the UFC in JP Buys.
He's really good. Like, and that's the thing, right? 2 Dana White Contender Series showings. And the first one, I think he was just over the age of 20. Like, I don't think he was that old when he had the first one. I'm pretty sure like 22, 23 or something like that. And, you know, at the end of the day, in the next one, he looked like a completely revamped fighter. And it wasn't that much long after. He literally got a takedown within like the first 30 seconds and just worked, you know, within a minute.
Yeah.
For less than a minute left in that round, he just dominated.
Yeah, I was going to mention, you know, the same thing in rewatching that one against Jacob Silva there. His domination on the ground was just insane, man. Like, you know, he never left any doubt of who was going to control this fight.
Well, one thing, you know, you kind of touched on that as a positive, but the one thing I find with fighters like that, and it kind of stood out to me a little bit with him, is like the striking game kind of revolves around the ability to kind of leap forward, look for a single leg or, you know, any kind of toss or body lock that you can get him to the ground or up against the fence. But like your strikes kind of are lunging at that point, and lunging strikes or strikes that are designed to get you to move forward at the same time kind of leave you open a little bit. And I find that, you know, if your chin stands up, your chin stands up. But like those are the kind of shots that do have good strikers look absolutely amazing, because to them, that big chin coming right at them with a looping hand probably looks like it's slow motion to a guy like Israel. And it's like, beep, bah.
Thank you for the visual representation. Very much appreciated. So, you know, he is scheduled to take on another Silva, you know, closer to the end of the month in Bruno Silva, March 20th. Really excited to see what he can do there. Like we said, he's 24 years old, very promising career ahead of him. Anything else you want to touch on JP Buys here?
Yeah, I think, half the reason I really like him so much is just he's seen good names already heading into the UFC. You know what I mean? I just think that we're seeing a guy that has all the tools to just get better. And, funny enough, we're seeing 2 South Africans on this list, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So crazy, man. I was mind blown. I was like, did this guy send me the same guy or what?
Great names on both parties.
Oh, for sure. So that's JP Buys at number 7. We'll be touching on another South African a bit later. But number 6, man, a beautiful name on this guy. We got, is it Uros Medic? Is that how you say it?
It's funny because I part of me just wants to go with Medic because his nickname is the Doctor. So, as much as I would love to call him Medic, I'm going to call him the Dr. Medic. Like, there's just zero chance I call him anything else.
It works too beautifully, man. What's funny, looking into this guy, I'm like, what? He's the number 3 ranked lightweight? How do I not know this guy? And then realize that's in Australia. I'm like, that's would have heard this.
That topology tings.
Yeah, they just throw that number 3 up there. I'm like, oh, you got to clarify this a little bit. So, we did see him on the Dana White Contender Series. He took on Mikey Rodriguez. And man, the thing that stood out was that this dude was relentless, man. Just constantly, pushing forward, intense kicks, really dictating the pace of the fight,
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. And it's weird because, I don't want to just throw this out, willy-nilly, but in that way where he kind of pushes forward but still hangs back and waits for the perfect strike, Lyoto Machida would have this weird way of, pushing forward but also have his head back and kind of do those things. It's not so far that way, but he really looked like such a good counter-striker. And in any opportunity he could land something really good, he did.
Yeah, for sure. That was very impressive for his debut. We are seeing him on the card this weekend. Anything else you want to touch on before we jump into a preview of that?
Yeah, well, I think with him, you're seeing good body kicks, things like that. The way he strikes is very creative, I like the way he sets up those punches. We just talked about that left cross that he landed. I mean, earlier in the fight, he was doing a lot of those kicks up top. And I think he was just finding places to land constantly. And that's what I like the most about him.
Yeah, in all his highlights I've seen, it's very impressive, the work that he puts in for sure. So, we are going to see him take on Alan Cruz at UFC 259 next weekend. That's going to be, a great bout between a couple of exciting prospects. So, anything else you want to touch on before we move to number 6 here? Or sorry, number 5?
Even if you look, I just want to throw out some of his stats. This is how good of a counter puncher and lander he is. In that fight, man, he threw 36 significant strikes and he landed 32 of them. That's really good. So it's little things like that I noticed were phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think it goes based on kind of what you were saying with the counter punches, right? While he's dictating pace, he's not jumping in until he's sure, and then that was very
100%.
Yeah, for sure. So that's going to be on display at UFC 259. Really pumped for that one. And that takes us on to number 5, somebody else who's fighting at UFC 259. And somebody I'm really hyped about. I've touched on him a few times myself, so I'm a little more familiar with him. But we got Kyler Phillips coming in at number 5. Kyler Phillips, very versatile game. Solid on the ground. He has great kicks. Looks like he has some musical skills as well. I mean, diving into his little Instagram page, the man has some moves on the piano.
He's a very stylish guy, He likes to keep that with that he's got that flow of life too,
Oh yeah, and rocks those pink Elton John glasses.
Exactly.
So he's actually had a few impressive wins so far in the UFC. Gabriel Silva, most recently Cameron Else, which we actually previewed that one, and that was a very, very impressive win, dominant win. What do you think about Kyler here?
Well, it's funny because I think that was kind of the stamp of approval, if you will, to get him a fight like this. He's going to be, part of one of the biggest cards of the entire year. The Gabriel fight was really, really good, right? That's a unanimous decision win, but you dive into those numbers and the man was just going off, right? He even got taken down twice, but he didn't spend too much time. It was 2.5 minutes or so of control time. I felt like he dominated that fight. He landed 112 strikes in that fight. You know what I mean? And so I feel like he really did put on a show. And that's where I think, if you were, because you said it before we kind of started that you felt like Kyler Phillips wasn't really a prospect, but I think in the way you kind of judge it, it's like you're always going to be a little biased now, especially when you get so much, exposure to a guy like that, seeing him fight 3 times, in the span that you have. I think that kind of plays a part in that. But in the reality of things, like, these are not the biggest of names. I mean, the Dana White Contender Series win was back in 2017, right? Like, that's where I don't even think that overall he was ready for that. He even ended up on a tough, I believe, things like that. So in that sense, I think he's now looking like a UFC fighter, right? When you look at the numbers and the skill that he put together on against the Gabriel Silva fight, I thought that was phenomenal. I thought he demolished that in the best way possible, right? Not in a sense of where he was just dropping mans and stuff like that, but he was creative. He was using a lot of different looks, and he was feinting. He was using takedowns. I just felt like he looked like a complete MMA fighter at the UFC level.
Yeah, that was actually kind of the thing that stood out to me as well as most impressive, is how versatile his game has become. He could switch it up in every level. So, he is going to be taking place on the main card at UFC 259, actually, in a very, very tough bout against Yadong Song. So we're really looking forward to this. We're looking forward to that one. It's going to be a great bantamweight bout. Can't wait for it.
And to be honest, I think that's probably, of all of the fights on this list, he has the hardest fight. Yadong Song is a beast. We're going to preview this fight later, but this guy is a monster. And I think if he wins this fight, man, woo! Look up for Kyler. Look up for Kyler. Look up for
Not
Kyler.
only would he be number 1, but he would no longer be eligible for the list.
Yeah, he's already flirting with that. That puts him in potential ranking fighter territory for his next bout. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And so that takes us into number 4, and that is the other fighter out of South Africa. We got Dricus Du Plessis. And, like we said, coming out of South Africa, nicknamed Still Knox, sports a 15-2 record. My word, man. Great record. We did see him in his UFC debut take on Marcus Perez. And, it was interesting to see his approach in that one. In rewatching that one, it seemed like he was very hesitant in it. There was a lot of a feeling out process. I mean, you're fighting Marcus Perez, so maybe that's why. But, he was eating a lot of shots. And to some extent, he even seemed a little tired when I was rewatching that one. But, man, he found his moment and he just exploded, man.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. It's funny, though, right? It's a weird way to look at things. So I remember even after the fight, he mentioned that, his body kicks he felt those. Marcus Perez has really good body kicks. He felt those. We've actually touched on that before. He took a little while to find his timing. That was kind of throwing him off a little bit. But like you said, the moment he kind of found his opportunity, he took it. And that leads me into kind of really considering his opponents and stuff like that, right? It is primarily all in Africa, and he hasn't been the most active fighter, right? We're talking less than 10 fights over the last 5-6 years. I mean, I think that he has what it takes now. I think that's the best thing about it, because KSW competition, that's where he has the loss, right? I think outside of that, you have to go pretty far back in his career to get that first career loss. So I think that you see those losses in most prospects or anyone that's on the come up type of career when they have to go through all of those feeling of process. Not everybody's a John Jones, and in that sense, I think it's always tougher for the international fighters, right? Because you're going to kind of second guess the competition. They're seeing the quality of fighters across the board. So with him, it was nice to see him put on a show, be able to kind of get that finish. We took him in that, in that fight in terms of a public bet, right? So, and unfortunately that led to, I think, Marcus Perez's entire, tailspin in the UFC. And unfortunately, the way things played out for him was very sad, and him kind of basically saying, I'm not good enough to be here, please release me. Du Plessis pretty much started that train for the most part. And I think that, when you look at the way he landed that punch, right, it was just this quick little shot right there. And I was shocked. Yeah. I was very shocked that it finished. Right? Yeah. And I think that's signs of just, time to hang him up a little, maybe too much, CT type of thing. I just felt like that was you're not machine. Like I really believe that was one of the most perfect punches I've ever seen landed, if you will. And I think that at the end of the day, I'm not trying to take anything away from Du Plessis. You know, we got him pretty highly ranked here, and his record does look great. But the UFC competition will surely, you know, play its role very soon.
Yeah, and so, you know, kind of touching on that, looking at this guy's history, nothing goes to decision, right? Everything is a finish. And even in watching that UFC debut and seeing how heavy he was breathing and how it was still in the first round, you know, you're not just going to come into the UFC and start knocking mans out, right? Like that, this is not the reality of the case. So how do you think he will fare in a 2-3 round fight?
Well, so that's my biggest thing, right? He's like one versatile fighter away with versatile striker away from having a bit more of a grueling fight that goes 3 rounds, right? I always felt like he looked a little muscular. He reminded me of Alex Hernandez in terms of his body structure, right? He was just very muscular. He looks top heavy, but I rewatched it a little bit myself, and actually he didn't look as top heavy as I remembered, but he's just a very muscular guy. And, you know, funny enough, you just notice that even in some of the heavyweight fights, when the fatter guys are the ones kind of lasting longer because they have to pump all that blood to make those muscles work at that weight, you know? So it really is one of those things where you kind of see them kind of diminish, right? Like it's really good for the power and even wrestling. Like I think wrestlers really benefit from that. You know, Matt Hughes had pretty good cardio, but like big guys like that, you know, when they have that real good edge for them in the first little early few rounds, I think that's the best part. And so when you lose that edge, it's kind of rough.
Yeah, and so that's, you know, what I'm looking forward to the most. Let's see him in a 3-round fight, see kind of how he can go in rounds 2 and 3, and see how he can adapt if he's not able to just straight finish his opponent. So that'll go a long way in his rankings. He is at number 4 right now with the opportunity to climb in those ranks. We will see him on March 20th taking on Trevin Giles. I'm pumped for that one. I think that's a great opponent for him.
And it's funny, right? Trevin Giles himself only has one split decision win against James Krause that we saw last year. And outside of that, everything's ended too. Don't be surprised if there's 2 guys. Right there. Yeah, don't be surprised if there's 2 guys just swinging for the fences come rounds 2 and 3.
Amazing. And so that takes us into number 3 on the Prospect Watch. That is Carlos Ulberg, who are also going to be seeing.
Let's get it, boy!
Yeah, pretty pumped about this one. He is going to be taking on Kennedy, and they love to do this to me, so I'm going to do my best here. But Nchukwu on UFC 259. You know,
coming up
again, diving into this guy a little bit, man. Another versatile dude. This guy could be the Luana of the male prospect list, man. He pro rugby, reality TV star, being asked to be on New Zealand's Bachelor, like, and yet he chooses fighting. It's amazing, man. Gotta love the versatility.
I can relate to bands like that. And the thing about him, right, that Contender Series win was just such a like, okay, yes, you're part of City Kickboxing. Yes, we expect a lot from you. Oh, God, you sent a man flying across the octagon. So it was one of those things where, like, you just lived up to the hype so well, and Dana's just looking at, contract, contract coming. Yeah, you got it. You know, it's without question, right? And so now we have him, you know, I think this is a pretty favorable fight when we talk about, you know, MMA in general, but he's only a 3-0 fighter, right? Like, those are the things that you want to tell yourself. Like, you just talked about it with the previous fighter. You don't just come into the UFC and just start walking all over people. However, this man clearly looks like one of those kickboxers that are coming out of that camp, right? Like, those guys love to do it. I think we just see him take on some pretty good quality opponents to really gauge where he should be. But the fact is, the camp is good, and I just think that, you know, I don't want to play too much into storyline, but like Kennedy Nchukwu, he was in one of the most like funny fights in his last bout, and we'll talk about that when we compare these two. But I truly believe that if he wants to have any opportunity this fight, this looks like a chance to prove that he can wrestle and stuff too, right? I think that's where you really want to be able to prove yourself, and I'm hoping that that's what comes into play. Like, I would love to see some of that takedown defense, some of that footwork that keeps him out of those dangerous places, some of the things that we've seen from guys like Israel, Kaikar France. Like, these guys are really good at kind of avoiding that part of the game, right? They want to keep it standing, and half of their grappling, half of their BJJ seems to just be to get it back to the feet kind of thing. So I don't see him being any different, but it'll be interesting to see if those skills kind of match up, right? Is he going to be able to lock down, you know, an 80 to 90 takedown defense as he, you know, makes his way through the UFC? That'll be interesting to see, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that Kennedy fight will be pretty telling, right? He's a very long fighter, right? And so you know, he's gonna have, you know, Carlos is gonna have to use different methods to kind of get close to him, take him down, even land some of those shots, right? And he's gonna have to be smart 100%. About it for sure. So, you know, you did touch on his Dana White Contender Series. It seemed like he had great skills on display there. He did land a mean left hook on Brandon Oliveira there, or sorry, Bruno Oliveira there. That did finish him. So that wasn't pretty impressive. Like you said, Dana White was happily handing out contracts there. So looking forward to seeing him fight, you know, next Saturday at UFC 259. Anything else you want to touch on before we dive into number 2 and number 1?
No, I just think that, like, if you look at the size of these guys, like, this is going to be a great fight for the weight class. You know what I mean? Like, these are the kind of guys you want to see fight, the athletic ones. I think that if the cardio holds up for Carlos, though, I think Kennedy's going to have a lot to chew here, because I've seen him fight the 3 rounds against a guy like Paul Craig, and we'll talk about this in more detail. But I think Carlos has a great opportunity here to kind of showcase his entire MMA game if he chooses to accept the opportunity.
Absolutely. And so, you know, that takes us right into number 2, and man, the crop coming out of, you know, the Khabib realm from Dagestani fighters is just insane, man. And so at number 2, we got Tagir Ulanbekov, you know, monstrous record, 12-1. You know, he made his UFC debut in October, I believe, against Bruno Silva, someone else that we've touched on, you know, just a little bit earlier on the Prospect Watch. And, you know, he did win in decision against that one. What stood out to me is just that insane wrestling, submission, you know, ground grappling game. You know, he can really take over a fight with that. Even if in that Silva fight, the entire first round was on the ground, and was on the feet, and he held his own there, right?
100%.
And, you know, tired him out. And by rounds 2 and 3, it's, I'm going to punish you on top of you, you know, and that's one thing that really stood out to me.
Well, it's funny that you brought up that fight, right? But when you go to the judges' scorecards, it was actually a lot closer than you think. You know what I mean? So that's where I really didn't feel like putting him at number 1 just because he is Khabib's relative. You know what I mean? He comes out of that guerrilla fighting scene that a lot of these guys are coming out of right now. You know, that's going to be the feeder league. That's the one where, you know, Khabib's trying to take over and kind of be the guy that's helping feeding all these fighters from Russia and surrounding areas to the UFC.
And thank you for that, Khabib, because you're producing some beauties.
Yeah, like these are all the guys like literally from his camp. Funny enough, he was saying how that Bruno Silva fight, I believe, was the first fight he ever fought without Khabib's dad with him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so little things like that makes them so, you know, so family oriented, if you will. Like it breeds success when you surround yourself with people like that. And, you know, the one thing I want to touch on is, you know, his only loss is against one of our boys, Zodas. Yeah, man, the guy's a beast, Joe. Guy's a beast. You know, he's a great striker at the weight class. He keeps himself in fights, man. He's just an absolute brawler. I love these guys here. Some of these Kazakh fighters, Russian fighters, all these guys, man. It's actually what's made me enjoy watching, you know, guerrilla fights more and all these kinds of things. As I look these guys up, you know, even Brave, you know, they have a massive month of fights coming up. So all these guys are going to start getting a little bit more exposure as the UFC starts to be like, yeah, let's throw 5-6 fights on over the course of a month.
Absolutely. So that wraps up number 2. We got Tagir. He's scheduled to take on Matthias Nicolau on March 13th. Really looking forward to that one.
It's a big fight.
Continue his dominance. Yeah. Huge fight. Anything else you want to touch on with that?
No, I think, you know, the Khabib hype is gonna roll that fight out as well as it can. You know, there's a couple guys like Askarov, all these big Russian names that are just, you know, taking the UFC by storm, and they carry that you know, badge proudly, and it's what's making the UFC so fun, man. I hate to say it, but you have to accept that a lot of the fighters from, you know, I would even say from, you know, middleweight or even lower than that down, a lot of the great fighters now that are coming up are mostly coming out of Europe and stuff like that. So it's fun to see.
Yeah, and you know, this guy can easily be at number 1, so we'll see how that fight goes on March 13th, and looking forward to seeing him in action. And that takes us to number one. Number one, another prospect we're going to be seeing at UFC 259 this weekend is Sean Brady.
I had
Sean
to do it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, I have to give the quotes to Prospect. This guy, you know, he's exploded onto the UFC scene here. He's 3-0. And look at those names, right? Court McGee, Ismail Nuradov, and Christian, I always say Christina Aguilera, but Christian, international pop star Christian Aguilera.
Too good.
Oh, man. Yeah, and those are all impressive wins, man, especially that Aguilera one. That was,
exactly.
Really, really telling. This guy, 13-0 record lifetime, has not lost yet. Very deserving of that number one spot.
I totally agree. And we talked about it, right? Like some of the tougher fights that people are taking on this list, right? He's going to be, I think he's going to have a huge one in front of him. CFFC champion. And he actually talked about how that Dana White Contender Series fight, he actually finished, he rolled over, got into a submission position and just absolutely finished him like it was a WWE finishing move. And he talked about it in the post-fight interview with Paul Felder, who he trains with like very regularly. They're very tight. I don't know if you watched the fight, but I mean, Paul Felder's basically got a heart on the entire time and just talking about how, oh, it's coming right here. It's over, guys. It's over. He's out. You know, he's doing it the whole time. So you can definitely tell they're boys, but he was also very analytical about it. Like he was telling you why this kid was so good. And did he make me a believer? Yeah, kind of, because I was watching it as he told me what was going to happen. And like I said, you know, he kind of perfected that move, and it's got him, a title and a UFC contract. Good for him. What I liked about him was the versatility. I thought that his takedowns, I thought that his striking looked phenomenal. He's an absolute mauler. Like, I don't think he wants to take a step back. I think that he has the ability to, you know, use some movement, use some head fakes, and just get in there. Whether he wants to take the fight to the ground or throw some strikes, he seems to really enjoy taking it down as he works people, you know, works them down a little bit and then take them down, get into some, you know, really good positive positions on the ground and kind of take them out, whether it's submission, ground and pound. He just looks really good. You know, he's a 3-0 UFC fighter. It's pretty phenomenal to see.
Yeah, I mean, a few things you touched on, that versatility of the game, right? He has all the raw skills. And on top of that, he's willing to take all the big name fights, right? The one canceled bout he had in 2020 was against our boy, remember the name, right? Bilal Muhammad, which, you know, we've seen his come up. We've seen his rise. He's getting the top respect now. And we are going to see him at UFC 259 take on Jake Matthews, who's another, you know, great fight. That's going to be a solid one.
Yeah, we're going to be touching on that shortly. And Jake Matthews is like a weird veteran of the sport who's you know, just getting to his 30s and stuff like that. So it's going to be a lot of kids that have just been in here for that long and taken on some really big names. And I think this is going to be a great test for Sean, and one of the more underrated fights on that card. So I would say, you know, be really excited for that one, because I think Sean's going to constantly push the pressure. He loves that, and he looks really good. For sure.
Yeah, and there's a reason why he's number one, right? So that kind of wraps up. That wraps up our top 10 list. Shout out to Jeremy Brown and Brand and all the guys at MMASucka for giving us this opportunity. Honestly, doing it last month was a real treat. It was a real pleasure to see all those guys and ladies in action. Then after touching on them. And March is just lined up beautifully, man. There's going to be great ones. So we appreciate this opportunity. It's great collaborating with you. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button. Our information is below. MMASucka's information is below. Give us all a follow. If you enjoy this content, there'll be plenty more of it.